certainly lots of them, and let's discuss all of these developments with three journalists. We have Richard Walker, from left to right. Richard Walker, consulting editor and co-founder of the pro-independence The National. We have Kevin McKenna, the columnist for The Herald and Observer, and Paul Sinclair, a former advisor to Gordon Brown. Thank you for joining me. Richard, first of all to you. Humza Yousaf of the SNP told me earlier that it was a big disappointment for the party not to win overall control, have an overall majority in Glasgow at the last local elections. They may end up the biggest party here this time, but still not have that overall control. That's bound to be another disappointment, isn't it?
Well, I think we have to keep things in perspective. It is disappointing. They haven't got enough members to form a majority of Glasgow, but to form an administration there. But they will be able to form an administration with the Green Party, I'm sure. So I think it's still, there's a cause for celebration. It's still true that Glasgow has rejected the Labour Party, and I think the story of this election is the demolition of the Labour Party in Scotland and the transfer of its support to the Conservatives.
Kevin, the SNP would want to frame any gains as a vote for another independence referendum, wouldn't it? So if it doesn't get a majority here and it has suffered some other loss of control in other Scottish councils, does that damage that agenda?
They would say not, simply because if, as expected, they win a majority of seats, or they are the biggest party throughout Scotland, and if they, as they're expected to do, win a majority of seats in the general election on June the 8th, then that will be 4 national elections on either side of the border, which the SNP have won overwhelmingly, and in each of them they carried the message in of saying yes to a second referendum if there had been material and significant changes in the makeup of the UK, which of course we've seen by Theresa May's approach to a hard Brexit.
Paul, how significant are the losses for Labour here, which has held overall control of this council for 40 years?
Well, you've got to look at the fact it was remarkable. The SNP was supposed to get an overall majority in 2012, and strangely Labour under a proportional system did. But I think what's important, everything in Scotland is seen rightly through the constitutional prism. Let's look at the trajectory of the vote. This city voted for independence in 2014. 55% of people voted SNP in 2015, 53% last year in the Scottish elections. Now it looks like the SNP aren't going to get above 45%. They may be winning, but they're winning on a downward trajectory. As somebody who's in the Labour Party, I know what that feels like, and it doesn't end well. So
do you think we've seen peak nationalism, if you like?
I think we may have done. I think it's very difficult for them. Once you start losing momentum, it's very, very difficult to reverse it. And I think if the vote, particularly in the general election, goes below 45% for the SNP, if there are more Conservative gains, and in these results it looks like there will be in the general election, it will be very hard for Nicola Sturgeon to justify another referendum.
Kevin, I asked earlier, could these be the least local elections that we've had on that constitutional question of whether voters were pro-independence or pro-union? How important has that been in the Conservatives' success here in Glasgow?
I think that's a key question, Anita. I was speaking to a senior Labour candidate just a few minutes ago who told me that she felt heart sorry for the local candidates in these elections of all parties, because up until Theresa May called her snap election, they were campaigning on local issues and services. They were.
The referendum.
They were.
The referendum dominates everything.
Hang on. It's certainly dominating more now, but these are small communities who have a deep sense of identification with their candidates, and then they very suddenly had to switch and know that they were going to be overwhelmed by European constitution and Scottish constitution.
I need to hand back, but Richard, in a line, are the results here going to have an impact on the general election?
Well, this isn't the general election, nor is it a referendum on independence. There is some indications here, I think, from what we can expect in the general election.
Okay, Richard Walker, Kevin McKenna, Paul Sinclair, thank you very much. I know I need to get back to you in